After the Ohrid agreement, the normalization process between Belgrade and Pristina went into a standstill. But that doesn't mean that there were no action and violent crises. Kosovo's government has unilaterally implemented some of the unresolved questions in dialogue by the police force. How will outcome of US and EU elections reflect on reviving the dialogue? Speakers in this panel are Borko Stefanović, Deputy President of Party of Freedom and Justice, Isak Vorgučić, Director of Radio Kim, Jeta Xharra, Founder and Director of Balkan Investigative Reporting Network in Kosovo, Veton Surroi, Journalist and Writer, and this panel will be moderated by Professor Filip Ejdus from Faculty of Political Science, University of Belgrade. Enjoy the panel.
I think Borko wanted to sit here.
There you go. Do you want Veton to sit before me?
Whatever you prefer.
Very nice. No, gender
okay?
balance.
Okay. Just give me put para me.
Welcome to the panel on Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. My name is Filip Ejdus, and I will be the moderator of this session. And before I start with the first round of questions, let me first introduce our speakers today, briefly, because you have their bios in the folder, and for all of them, I don't think there is a need to make a detailed introduction. So, Borko Stefanović, to my right, is currently Deputy President of the Party of Freedom and Justice, SSP, and former negotiator in the Belgrade-Pristina normalization process. Then the next person to the right is Jeta Xharra, who is the founder and director of the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, BIRN, in Kosovo. To the right is Veton Surroi, writer, journalist, politician, and civil society activist, also former negotiator. And finally, Mr. Isak Vorgučić, who is director of Radio Kim in Čaglavica, Kosovo, since its foundation in 2000. Without any further ado, I would like to ask you, Mr. Surroi, can you please tell us where we are now conceptually in the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, and what could be done to revitalize the process?
Thank you very much. Glad to be here among many friends. President Ahtisaari told me an anecdote of when he went to an African state as a UN envoy, and they said, next time send us an envoy with one hand, because every time a UN envoy comes to our country, he says, on the one hand, we can help you and do this. On the other hand, we have these restrictions that cannot do the job. I'm afraid that we have had EU envoys and facilitators with two hands in the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue. And therefore, we have had a process of negotiation based on constructive ambiguity, which you could interpret on the one hand as a process of normalization between two states, on the other hand, as a process of normalization between the Republic of Serbia and whatever Kosovo is deemed by the Republic of Serbia. And we have now reached the peak of that constructive ambiguity in three basic phases. The first one was trying to deal with real-life issues and trying to resolve real-life issues, license plates or ID cards or things like that. The second phase was more adventurous because the first one did not create many results, and it involved attempts at land swap, and Madame Mogherini was involved in that phase, infamously. And then the third phase was the one we are living now, which is the Brussels and Ohrid agreement, something that was initially called the Franco-German plan, which was given to the parties as a take it or leave it option, and that has now a three-dimensional life. For Kosovo, it is a document that is an agreement on de facto recognition. For Serbia, it is a menu out of which it can pick what it needs or what it deems to be legal and legitimate to implement. And for the European Union, because it is an unsigned document, it is a document that has acquired legal personality by being included in Chapter 35 of the EU integration process for the Republic of Serbia. And for the Republic of Kosovo, it is a legal obligation under the stabilization and association process. It has a different name, but it's basically that. So we are now at the peak of constructive ambiguity, and we are entering a totally different world of the age of geopolitics, as was mentioned in these past 2 days. And so now is the time to think what ought to be done to further develop this in new conditions of a geopolitical struggle.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, public opinion is an extremely important factor in all peace processes and normalization dialogues. And the public can both facilitate and impede the progress in any negotiations, including this one. You will find on your chairs a report from the public opinion poll that the Faculty of Political Science organized, and the paper was co-authored by myself and Tijana Rečević. And in this paper, we show how the Serbian public is not only ignorant of the content of the Brussels and Ohrid agreements, but interestingly, that many of them actually prefer not to know much so that they can maintain some deep-seated beliefs. We call this the ostrich effect. Mr. Vorgučić, is the sentiment among Kosovo Serbs regarding the agreements and the current state of affairs, what is the sentiment and what are their expectations for the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue moving forward?
Well, when we are talking about Belgrade and Pristina dialogue, there are somehow Kosovo Serbs in the midst of it. On one hand, Kosovo Serbs are connected to Serbia. You know, we are also, according to Kosovo Constitution, can have double citizenship. And on another hand, there is a notion in Kosovo that Serbs do not want to integrate in Kosovo or are not fully integrated. I have a slight problem with that because we used to live there for generations, I mean, how come that now you need to integrate in your place of birth? It is difficult to comprehend. However, there is a need to adjust to a so-called new reality, for which I see Serbs completely adjusted. According to the survey we did 2 years ago, 98% of Kosovo Serbs have Kosovo IDs, which means Kosovo citizenship. That means that they were willing to take citizenship of Kosovo, comparing maybe to 2/3 of their compatriots who left Kosovo in '99 and didn't want to share that reality. Well, now, what I see as base of that notion among Kosovo majority is that it is expected that, you know, because there is among the nationalists, there is a sentiment that in order, you cannot just love Kosovo, but you have to hate Serbia alongside. Because if you say something positive about Serbia or Serbs, it means that you are an inner enemy or that you collaborate with Serbs. I think that this is somehow expected from Kosovo Serbs, which is, I mean, cannot be, because there is a notion, you know, we accepted, we love Kosovo, we accepted what is the reality at the moment, but certainly we are still attached to Serbia emotionally and also through the services, which are during the recent years or months banned from Kosovo Serbs. There is, I mean, I will not repeat all the news that we have already. You know that. I would only like to point that it seems, or it is widespread, that Serbian institutions are closed in Kosovo. But these institutions cannot be closed. Serbia would need to change constitution in order to do that. Only buildings were taken, and these are buildings of the institutions that were providing services to Kosovo citizens that Kosovo institutions do not provide. So that notion that they were parallel is a bit not standing. I understand that it was that these institutions are difficult to for the Kosovo government, but we hoped that talks, dialogue, negotiations, and some kind of mutual agreement will help some kind of institutions provide services for Kosovo Serbs, and also we hope that that would be an association of municipalities with the Serb majority.
Excellent that you ended up with the association, because that's exactly the question that I wanted to ask Madame Xharra. The government in Pristina has been reluctant for many years to establish the association of Serb-majority municipalities in Kosovo, and has introduced, as it was mentioned, unilateral measures in the north. How does Kosovo society perceive this policy course of the government in Pristina, and what are their expectations of the process moving forward?
The Kosovo society first perceives this as a Kosovo-Serbia dialogue, not a Pristina-Belgrade dialogue, as you have labeled it in this panel. It sees that as a backwards view, actually, to view it as two cities of potentially what might look to you like the same country. These are two equal countries, Kosovo and Serbia, who are dialoguing, not Pristina and Serbia, Pristina and Belgrade. This is how Kosovo society perceives it, and I believe about 100 other countries who have recognized Kosovo. So first, that's the difference. Second, that difference is clear also in the last Ohrid agreement, which was a Kosovo-Serbia Ohrid agreement signed. Third, it's not only this government that has been reluctant to do the Kosovo association with Serbian majority community association. The last 11 years, governments have been reluctant to implement this agreement. So this government is probably more in the center of it because it's been here the longest. We haven't had a government in Kosovo, running Kosovo for 4 years, in maybe 15 years. And this is why it may look like this government is reluctant, but in the history of my reporting, since 2013, when the agreement for Kosovo association was signed, there has not been a government that has been dying to implement this agreement. Why? Because there are another 13 agreements that have been signed much before the municipalities' agreement, the association, which have not been implemented. And Kosovo society has said, why should we bother implementing this if the energy agreement, for example, which is far more a practical agreement which affects our energy bills. The energy agreement was signed much before Kosovo Association Agreement. It was signed in 2011. And the electricity bills were supposed to be paid, because the background to that is that people living in the north of Kosovo did not pay electricity bills. So the rest of us Kosovars had to pay the bill to make it up for the lack of payment for the north. And what this created was a no man's land where the cryptocurrency was flowering because electricity was free. Therefore, we've had 13 years that that agreement wasn't implemented. What happened is that, rightly so, the public made pressure on all previous governments. And due to public pressure, the association agreement was put on hold. Nobody was going to win elections if they didn't do first the agreement on energy, the agreement on freedom of movement, the agreement on the return of cultural heritage objects which were stolen from Kosovo. This was an agreement signed 15 years ago, and it's not yet implemented. The cultural heritage of Kosovo has been stolen and now is in Belgrade. Those materials have not returned. So there's, for Kosovo society, if that was your question, there's a bunch of other priorities compared to this. And if those haven't been met, why should we run after being good students in implementing this? Now, there's a different atmosphere in that I can really tell you that it is a blessing in disguise that this agreement was not implemented before, because the fear was that this agreement was going to create another Republika Srpska. The way it was envisaged in the beginning, that it would give too much power. Now, the atmosphere is different. I can report that at least the freedom of movement agreement is actually much better than it used to be. So there's a few things that people feel are worse, but this is better. People can cross borders much easier than we used to, i.e. the car plates, the whole car plates saga, why this unilateral decision of the Kosovo government started off, has been, to be honest with you, worth it. Why? Today, everybody is registering the cars. Everybody who before used to burn cars because they used to be registered with Kosovo plates, something that Serbs in the south of Kosovo always registered with Kosovo plates, and they were not less patriotic or traitor Serbs. They did. But the north of Kosovo decided to completely resign with mayors, with judges. Why? For something very technical. For refusing to register car plates under Kosovo, under Kosovo institutions. Now, that has been achieved. It's not even a matter of discussion. And the second thing why it is much easier to establish the association now, or let's say publicly acceptable, is that the key event that happened in Kosovo, the terrorist attack organized by Milan Radojic and his 30 armed men that wanted to create a de facto situation where Kosovo, the north separates. When the land swap failed, that was the second attempt to create a situation where this Kosovo, let's say, municipalities agreement that was signed would be active in real life, and it would have ultimate executive powers, which Kosovar Albanians didn't want. From the beginning, we feared the Republika Srpska scenario. That is far less likely to happen now. Whatever draft of the Kosovo Association is going to be, everybody now, although Kosovo paid the price for it, Kosovo is under measures, EU measures, we pay the price, but I think the majority of Kosovo society, judging from the polls, sees it as a completely worthwhile sacrifice, because the international community, or the people who are pushing Kosovo to implement this deal, understand that it has to be an association which will not have executive powers that would allow the blockage that Republika Srpska is allowed in Bosnia as a country, to make Bosnia dysfunctional. We don't want an association that makes Kosovo dysfunctional.
Thank you. Mr. Stefanović, as a former negotiator, how would you assess Serbia's track record so far in the Belgrade-Pristina normalization dialogue? Where do you see the space for future compromise, but also what are the red lines that should not be crossed, in your view?
Well, first of all, I need to start by a short remark. Charles Dickens wrote Tales of Two Cities, and it was not really about two cities. So this is Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. You can call it whatever you like. The fact is that current situation shows pretty much, I would say, the most damaging entity in Europe. We have a situation in which Serbian minority is treated like enemies of the state. Albin Kurti is planning to push all the Serbs out of Kosovo. He doesn't really want to create association of Serbian municipalities, or you can call it whatever you like. Nobody really pays attention or cares what constitution of Kosovo says. Nobody really translates laws into Serbian language. As long as there is Aleksandar Vučić and Albin Kurti in power, there will be no solution. There will be no red lines because the red lines are moving left and right, who cares? Also, there is no carrot anymore. Back in our days, we had a carrot. Now there is no carrot. Why should Kurti create this association? Sanctions of the EU? I think if you talk to anyone in Kosovo, not publicly, they would tell you that it's a mockery. If you talk with Vučić, does he really want to bring Serbia to EU? Of course not, because then they would be kicked out of power. So this is the current situation, which is yet another powder keg. This is yet another and continual struggle between two national projects. When you have a struggle between two national projects, there is no human rights, there is no rule of law, there are no these small things that we are trying to burden ourselves for decades now, because Albanians in Kosovo want to create another Albanian state, Serbs in Serbia want to say that Kosovo is part of Serbia. There is no absolutely room that this huge gap can be filled as long as we stay in our trenches and continue to say things which are important for our nation building, etc., etc. As long as Serbs in Kosovo are treated from one side, from Pristina, as enemies of the state, as an unwanted element that needs to be kicked out of Kosovo, and from Belgrade as a voting machine, as a support for criminal activities and other people who actually brought all the Serbian nation in Kosovo inside of this grinding machine, which is horrible, because right now Serbs are not part of institutions because of Vučić's wise policy to kick them out. He kicked them out. Also, Serbs need to go back to these institutions. They need to participate in Kosovo elections. They need to start taking their own positions that will allow them to use all constitutional and civilized rights which they are entitled to. It doesn't really matter to whom they vote. As long as for us in Serbia, it doesn't matter to whom they vote, what their religion they are, or something like that. As long as government in Pristina treats them, not as Serbs. I heard once in Podgorica that being Serb in Kosovo is not ethnicity, it's a political project. That's really dangerous. So as long as Kosovo at least says, and Serbia, that we want to join EU, we will never get there. Because right now we have two corrupt elites. We have two faces of Greek god Janus, Vučić and Kurti, who are kissing each other. They are helping each other. They are playing along all the special operations and everything they need as long as they can stay in power. Serbs in Kosovo are suffering. So the news is that as long as Serbian establishment and Serbian politics is concerned, Kosovo right now is not one of the highest topics because the government of Mr. Vučić doesn't care and he wants to hide it. So for us, is equally important the well-being and survival of the Serbs in Kosovo as well as a status issue used to be. So now they're equally important. This is the result of, let's say, last 5 or 10 years of completely disastrous policies of both sides and absolutely no real essential movement in the dialogue. Because, as Mr. Surroi well said, this is like a menu for us here in Belgrade because people are saying, well, we will use this, we will not use that. In Pristina, they only care about any form of recognition or formal recognition, which will never come, whoever comes in power in Serbia. So formal recognitions are not really that big of a hurdle, if I understand, for Kosovo, and it shouldn't be. Because after all, the current history and developments in Europe are showing us that as long as we have another precedent after Kosovo precedent, which is Ukraine, which is Moldova, which is Georgia, it doesn't really matter whether central government puts in their constitution how far their borders are as long as they want to join European Union. So I think it's really good news that now we have on the same wagon Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. And it's a good thing because our relationship and regulated our huge problems between us can move on. Finally, I agree to one big agreement that waits for us. This agreement needs not to only treat how we will treat ourselves between ourselves, it should treat all the agreements that hadn't been implemented so far, including association of municipalities. And by the way, there was no concluded energy agreement between Belgrade and Pristina, and there was no agreement on return of the cultural heritage in those days. I don't know what Mr. Vučić and his government did in the meantime. Actually, nobody knows. So, to conclude, I think there is a way forward. I think in that way forward, we need to shut off and get off from our illusions, and that we need to be completely realistic because situation in the world, unfortunately, has changed for the worse. Now we have new American administration that is, let me put it this way, not so orthodox about international actions. So it is a thing of huge concern for everybody. And there will be tons of disappointment in days to come. So I think in the whole framework of keeping peace, keeping normality, normalization, reconciliation, and things that we need with Kosovo, we need to understand what they need really, and they also need to understand what we need. So far, we just have two autocrats who are just toying with them sitting in power and actually not helping people, and the result is that more and more Serbs are leaving Kosovo, and that takes me back to the shady year of 2008, which I remember really well, when Kosovo was trying to, proclaim independence, and they were saying we are building a multi-ethnic European pro-Western society. I don't see it now, to be really honest with you. The only thing I see are people getting arrested, beaten, shot at, and I'm not talking about Banjska, of course. So this is a situation that is only fueling revisionism, nationalism, and one-sided solutions that are actually taking us back to the, maybe not the 90s, but actually to the 19th century. The concept of pure ethnicity, of one big ruler, of autocracy, of severing ties with European Union as a natural home of ours is absolutely 19th century. It's becoming the game of the day as we see it. So out of this disappointment, I think we are pretty much ready to have a clean, new solution, but hey, we cannot do it with these guys in power.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Surroi, the same question. Where do you see the space for compromise? And from the Kosovar point of view, or Kosovo's point of view, where are the red lines that should not be crossed in the dialogue, however we call it?
Yeah. I'm not sure I can speak on behalf of Kosovo. I'm here on my own, speaking my own thoughts and my own mind. I think we have to change both the paradigm, and we have to change and try to think a bit out of the box and in wider terms and wider perspectives. In the past quarter of a century, and don't forget, in European time, a quarter of a century after the war would be 1970 for Western Europeans. For us, it's still debating about this or that action between Kosovo and Serbia. But in the past quarter of a century, Kosovo and Serbia, the line dividing the border between Kosovo and Serbia was the line of friction between the Euro-Atlantic world and Russia. Russia was engaged geopolitically in not allowing that there ought to be some kind of normality and closure in this part of the world. This is also true for Bosnia and Herzegovina and for years in Montenegro, et cetera, et cetera. In the next quarter of a century, after some pause in the war in Ukraine, there is a real possibility that the line of friction between Kosovo and Serbia be between the Euro-Atlantic world and the Eurasian world, in which China will predominate. So if we think from that perspective, the question that arises is not red lines or compromises, etc., but how do we get together out from that framework and try to establish a joint future in which we do not become friction lines between the great power struggle. And so in order to do that, of course, one of the big projects that has been developing, which I think is good, which is the idea of the Western Balkans with its 4 European freedoms, has not taken account on the one side that these are unfinished conflicts, but on the other side that you cannot build a space, a shared space of economic cooperation and freedom of movement, etc., if you do not have shared space of security. And so the question that arises today for us is how do Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, etc., create a shared space taking into account the differences between these countries? And there I would not agree with Borko. I mean, I understand where he stands as an opposition leader. I was one at one time. I think what we need to take into account are some of the factors that will not change, that we need to engage in this project, taking into account that the Republic of Kosovo exists. We have to take into account that the Republic of Serbia treats Kosovo as part of its, if not territory, of its interest, of its future, of its identity, of its religious inspiration, etc., etc. So we have to take into account that in the next decade, or within this decade, we will probably not see change of governments either in Kosovo or in Serbia. And that despite of this, the question is not how do we, and this is of course quite legitimate, how do we make our countries more democratic, but how do we make our countries, our societies, more responsible for a shared space? Because the question is not, Kosovo cannot be secure if Serbia is not secure within a Euro-Atlantic world. And Kosovo and Serbia cannot be secure if we try this project by pushing any country into becoming something that it is not. So we have to think of a shared security space today, as it is, with Serbia not wanting to become a member of NATO, but a shared space where Serbia cannot block other countries into entering NATO, but cooperating together. In a decade or so, this whole space ought to generate security, and the time to make decisions about it is now. And this is my answer.
Excellent. Thanks for bringing up the security interdependence, because we often see the whole conundrum as a zero sum, and we sometimes miss the gains, absolute gains that we might get from more cooperation and compromise. Mr. Vorgučić, let's talk a little bit about the role of the international community. How effective is the diplomatic pressure, and what could the international community do more or better to move this process forward in a desired direction?
Well, with this question, I feel like a part of international community, but it is directed to me because Kosovo Serbs actually expect some actions from international community, since Belgrade's powers are reaching up to Merdare, Jarinje, and other crossings. We have international community diplomats on the ground. They were appealing for a number of times, for a number of different cases, and they were more or less, maybe less successful. What could be done after most of the international community recognized Kosovo's independence is another question, because once you grant the independent state, then you cannot interfere within the inner businesses. What I would like to see more, and what actually international representatives are appealing to, is better attitude of Kosovo authorities towards Serbs. You know, there were a number of appeals for the mayors in the north, for the buildings of the municipalities that were taken, for the funds spent on the people there. On the contrary, we have now mayors that run as a minority, as we had Serb mayors during the 90s, which were minority in, majority municipalities where Albanians lived, and claimed, well, this was by the law, they could have gone on elections, but they didn't want to. If you want to repeat that kind of actions, then we will not reach to an situation where we can live in calm surrounding and contribute together for Kosovo. Because if we do not fight together for Kosovo, we will fight each other for Kosovo, and this is what is happening at the moment. If Serbs, as I pointed out in the first answer, are not considered as equal citizens, and I can name number of actions going at the present time, and institutional pressure that is going against these municipalities. We had 13 hectares of land taken from Gračanica municipality, that's just recent. We have one house which is at the ski slopes in Brezovica, taken also by the privatization agency and given to Kosovo Intelligence Agency for usage. I mean, on the skiing part, what for, in the majority Serb municipality, and not to mention number of actions and police brutality in the north, and beatings of people. So I do not see that there is that powerful international community or that powerful Belgrade that could prevent Kosovo authorities for accepting Kosovo Serbs as their citizens.
Thanks. International community in the room, you heard that. Some ideas on how to move forward. Now, Madame Xharra, I will ask you now to take your crystal ball out and to look a little bit, try to look a little bit into the future. So what are the long-term consequences for both Kosovo and Serbia, particularly in terms of European integration, if the normalization process is stalled and remains where it is right now?
Well, we have a pretty good deal on the table in a sense that the Ohrid agreement is not seen, the framework agreement is seen as something that Kosovo did the compromise, and so did Serbia. In a sense that in Kosovo, you could have not imagined that Albin Kurti would have gone back on his word that he would have signed anything that said Zajednica is going to be formed. Zajednica is how the association is called. He made that compromise. In Kosovo, that is seen as a huge step, as a betrayal of his policy, of what he said initially. So that step has been made. Kosovo has said it will do it under its own terms, of course. Serbia has said it will not. It will de facto recognize, not formally recognize. But what happened afterwards is that Serbia pulled out. So what are we to think after this? Is that if the future is going to be more like this, Kosovo looks like it's playing the game. It understands that Serbia will not enter any agreement, any compromise. It seems like Serbia decided that they will sign this agreement, but then pulled out, changed its mind. For us, just Veton reminded me, this was 1970s, Second World War. For Kosovo, it feels like, well, we always thought this is going to be the end game to international community that is surprised of Serbia's behavior, that is appeasing Serbia, that is actively why international community does not have the power to make Kosovo government do anything is because it looks like it's appeasing Serbia. It's obvious. It's obvious to all of us. It's appeasing Serbia, hoping that Serbia will become more pro-European than pro-Russian. To us, Serbia looks, in the region, is the most pro-Russian country. Public opinion measured. And we are just waiting for international community to understand that. Therefore, we are playing the game. It looks for us like you are, imagine in 1970, if you were France or UK, and if you are made to sign an agreement, something like an Ohrid agreement that Kosovo signed with Goebbels. He was Minister of Information of Hitler. Today, we signed an agreement with Minister of Information of Milosevic. This was a guy, when I was 19, I saw him on TV kicking 1 million Albanians out of Kosovo and justifying the policy of Milosevic. Today, it's like signing an agreement with Goebbels for us. We are waiting for, we are not waiting for any miracles. We are playing the game. The future is that we wait for maybe powers to change, but it doesn't really matter to Kosovo because whether governments change in Serbia. What we've seen is, as Borko said, Serbia will not recognize Kosovo. No government will. So the nuance whether Borko's party is in power or Vučić really doesn't matter. And I think the question is, if we see in the future, can we get more normal countries? Not normalization, even if it's too much to ask for normalization of the relationships between Kosovo and Serbia. Can we get a more normal countries in the future? And by that I mean a Serbia which does not deny its genocide in Bosnia. It's not even a relation to us. Serbia needs to come to terms dealing with the past of the war it went with in Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, and we are the 4th country it went to war with. We are not the only country. Therefore, in Serbia, you need to see a normalized, you need to see whether we will have a government that doesn't steal elections in Serbia in 10 years. We will, because judging from my colleagues in Xharra, this was a stolen election. The people who monitor elections, we do the same that Xharra does in Kosovo. We do not have a stolen election in Kosovo. I'd rather live, what I want to say in terms of transitional justice, to say as a last point, Kosovo to me looks like it is doing the difficult things for it as a normal country should. We have 5 leaders of the KLA in The Hague answering for the crimes, the war crimes they are accused. Serbia doesn't have that. Serbia is denying even a genocide that happened in Srebrenica, and it has big screens everywhere, like we are not a genocidal nation. The Freud would say, well, you are slip of tongue. Exactly. You are proving it yourself. So I must say that for me, the answer is transitional justice. Kosovo is doing its share, is going through a painful process, the Hague Tribunal trying its war crime indictees. Serbia is not. I'd rather be a part of a half-baked normal country than a part of a fully established fascist country. Okay. So that's what I see happening in the next 10 years.
Just a sub-question, because this question is probably on many people's mind. You mentioned that Ohrid agreement and Brussels agreement, the second Brussels, are the platform for future relations, that we should rely on that. But many people in Serbia would ask, why would we have high expectations of Brussels II and Ohrid if Brussels I from 2013 was not implemented? And who gives us guarantees that Kosovo will fulfill its part of the deal from the Ohrid and Brussels II? So what would you answer to that sort of concern?
Well, what guarantees does Kosovo have that Serbia will not block Kosovo in its obligations? The Ohrid agreement says that Serbia must not block Kosovo on its path to international institutions. What guarantees does Kosovo have that when Kosovo established the zajednica, Serbia will not block it? I would ask you the same reciprocal question. Is there any guarantee?
Okay, I'm asking questions in this panel. Not you.
I know, but I'd love to have your thoughts on this.
When
This
you
is how
invite
it
me to
looks.
Pristina to give a talk, I will answer. But
Well, Kosovo is not getting any. Kosovo has measures, EU measures against it. Serbia doesn't. So, you know, this is a pretty big punishment that Kosovo is getting. And this, you know, I think it's actually what we're seeing is that Serbia is actively blocking Kosovo to enter international institutions, and Kosovo is holding off from writing of the draft on the association.
Thank you. We'll end this second round of questions with the last question to Mr. Stefanović, hopefully to end on a positive note. Is there a possibility of a new framework or a set of conditions that could break the current deadlock and lead to some at least incremental progress in the normalization process?
I think it's really possible. I managed to find all of my Buddhist strength not to answer these things from Jeta, because as you can hear, there were some references used against my country that are absolutely appalling. Why is that? Because in current Kosovo society, they have no ability to distinguish their leadership from their own country. We do. And this is our strategic goal. You cannot call the country a fascist country. You cannot call Aleksandar Vučić a Goebbels. Even I don't really like him. Actually, nobody really likes him. And actually, I think that he created such a havoc in our country, in our own society, but also in the region, which I agree. But to use these sentences against somebody that you need to talk to us. It's like saying for your own kid, if you don't make 1 million euros per month, you're not my son. Well, actually, I will love you no matter how much money you earn. So that's why we love them. And we believe that there is a good strength and ability in them to find their lost tolerance, European spirit, and sense for the future, not for the past that is murked with these one-sided colors. I hate comparisons between France and Germany after World War II with Serbia and Kosovo. I hate it. And everyone hates it in the Balkans. You know why? Because everybody wants to be France. And actually, I'm not sure when I look to Kosovo today, they are France. Because in France, even in 1947, after some really nasty actions against collaborators and things like that, you actually didn't treat people of other ethnicity as enemies of the state. You actually didn't organize actions to push them out, to leave the country. You actually respected your laws and constitution, which they don't. You actually toyed and got on with economy, with finance reforms, with tax reforms, with human rights, the rule of law. In Kosovo, no. Why? Because Kurti wants to have a glorious victory as the father of Albanians in the next elections. Aleksandar Vučić was the same thing. The only thing which is kryptonite for him is Serbia getting into the EU. So please forget about this nonsense, this utter nonsense that Vučić is Putin and Kurti is Zelensky. Because it's like, it's really non-comparable, okay? I will be mild here. So how we get out of this situation? I'll tell you how. We need to respect that there is a point, one point, small point, which we simply cannot avoid. This is a formal recognition of Kosovo that will not happen. Not because we are afraid of our public opinion. It's because we don't want to create of Serbia, Hungary in 1922. We don't want to create never-ending Trianon sense in our society and the future generation to create real guys with real black shirts in our society. I don't like that country. I would suggest humbly and friendly for them to do the same. Let us have one crucial difference, how we see each other, whether it's a formal view, but is that really an impediment to clear the slate, to resolve every other issue that stands between us? Of course it shouldn't be. That's why we need to move on. That's why we always propose, if you want to have a deal with us, Start with allowing Serbian trucks to get Serbian food or other goods into Kosovo, not only on one border crossing or administrative crossing, as we call it. Do it. What's the problem to buy, I don't know, Serbian chips or beer? Is that a problem? Oh yeah, it's a problem. It's a big blow to their sovereignty, as they call it. I think it's nonsense. How can you be a democratic society with such a system? I think it's bad also for Albanians. I don't see NGOs in Pristina who are doing tremendous work on reconciliation and facing the war crimes like we see in Belgrade. And I said this to Jeta many years ago, still nothing. I don't see Mirdita festival in Pristina, still. We need those things. Where are these brave individuals? How come that one thing you cannot speak badly in Kosovo is UČK? Why? What, they're some kind of saints? You know, to expect Serbia to say, well, you know, let's move on, let's look to the future, sure. But don't expect that the country, not the government, the country, should be humiliated. We should look to the Good Friday Agreement, famous Good Friday Agreement between Ireland and the UK. There are so many good things inside. We should learn from it. And that's how this ambiguity, which I don't like personally, can be useful once again. And we need to do this, and we need to bring all entities in the Western Balkans together. We need to create something called Visegrad II. We need to organize ourselves and to create one secretariat that will speak with one voice to Brussels. The dark days are coming. We need to be together in order, with one voice, with one unity, to join European Union. If we continue like this, it looks really like some cheap video game with some really, really funny characters who think that they're the, you know, the kings of the world, and actually what they're ruling are empty villages, young people leaving, Serbs and Albanians, corruption everywhere, everything is falling apart. So we need freedom, we need economy, we need cooperation, but no humiliation. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to come back to that.
Sure, but briefly, because we have 10 more minutes.
We need an update on the information Borko just gave. Mirdita Festival was actually blocked in Belgrade. It was held in Pristina. Just get that fact checked, one. Two, in the middle of Pristina today, not only there is an NGO doing good work on transitional justice, but we have, BIRN, funded by the Dutch and the Germans, have opened a museum which speaks about Kosovo refugees that were thrown out by Milosevic and the revenge attacks on Serbs that happened after the war. That is a museum that deals with the past of both, treating both victims as such in the middle of the city, in the center. Something unimaginable to go in Belgrade today and look at what has happened to the victims where Serbia went to war with. And third, we have a Kosovo parliament that voted to try only Albanians for war crimes. Unlike in Serbia, which you don't have war crimes ongoing for Kosovo crimes, you currently have in everyday broadcasted crimes against the KLA leaders, those, not only that it's acceptable, but nobody is burning the house down because we have 5 of the main Kosovo liberation leaders being tried in The Hague. Because we think that to become a normal country, you need to go through the process. Not because we think they're guilty, but we are going through the process. Instead, what do you have in Belgrade? You go in the middle of Belgrade. When I went together with my daughters, because I want them to see today's Serbia, we went and saw a huge poster around the building of the former Serbian army, which says, "Kad se vojska vrati na Kosovo." That's how Serbia is dealing with its past and future. I had to explain to my daughters to be prepared who is their neighbor, to explain the poster, that the roundabout poster throughout the boulevard, the main policy of this country towards Kosovo is to return the army to Kosovo.
Jeta, we need to stop here because I'm sure that you also want to hear the questions from the audience. Duly noted,
Sure.
Everything you said. We have 8 more minutes for questions and comments from the audience. If you could please introduce yourself and ask the question. Okay, we have a gentleman in the back.
Hello, thank you so much. It was very informative, and I appreciate the participation of all the panel. My name is Basil Wild. I'm a master's student at the Faculty of Political Science here in Belgrade. And it was mentioned toward the beginning of the discussion, the role of public opinion on both sides for either the hindrance or the galvanization of the dialogue. My curiosity is what role, if any of you who feel qualified to answer, I would appreciate one. What role does the clergy on either side in the communities of both the Kosovar Albanians and the Serbs in Kosovo Serb territory in the north and also in Serbia, and the church, His Holiness Patriarch Porphyry, what role they play in the shaping of public opinion toward the ongoing dialogue? Thank you.
Okay, maybe we can pick one more if somebody has something urgent. If no, then we will... Okay, we have one more there.
Hello everyone, I am Lazar Šljukić, I'm a student of political science, I'm currently in my senior year. So I have a question about an important topic that is Trepča and Gazivode. I think they're a really important topic for both Kosovo Serbs and Kosovo Albanians. As you know, both of these institutions are part of Washington Agreement from 2020. So do you have any idea, will there be any progress made in resolving those issues? Thank you.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes to return to the panel. Maybe we can start in the reverse order. Maybe we can start with Borko and end with Veton, please. If you'd like to respond.
Listen, I think that it's pretty clear that we all need to work on our societies and the problems that we inherited pretty much. It was somebody else's debts that we are paying pretty much from Milosevic. So it was not Đinđić's mistakes or somebody else's. But I'm proud that Serbia actually created the prosecutor's office for war crimes and also the court, and actually that most of the people went to The Hague. They were preparing the cells for Mr. Taci, okay? So I'm also happy that Taci is there right now, because I believe humbly that he deserves to be there. Now, maybe some of our interlocutors and friends from Pristina would say, you say this because he's Albanian. No, actually, I don't think that war criminals actually have anything to do with other humanity, and they shouldn't be giving, honor to put under ethnicity. This is, by the way, what they want, and this is what they did, and they did it with the flag. But I think that we should do more, I agree. I commend and I fully support if such actions were taken in Pristina. You know, there is a museum, I will visit it as soon as I can to see actually the footage and documents about Serbs being expelled from Kosovo. If that is true, I believe Jeta. And Albanians, as you said it, of course, which is natural. I would be the first to congratulate and to say this is a wonderful thing that would actually help. But there will be, I don't think that there will be no way out. As long as we have leadership in Pristina and Belgrade who simply don't see, why should we do this? I will speak only for Belgrade. Why should we make any progress? Why should Albin Kurti, create the Association of Serbian Municipalities? Whether Kosovo will join European Union? Of course not. Whether they will join NATO? Of course not. You know, if it's puzzling for you, look to Ukraine. Wake up. If anybody really believes that the current government in Belgrade wants to bring Serbia to European Union, they're really delusional. So where is the carrot, the famous carrot from Thessaloniki, 20-something years of promises, blah, 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 and now we came to a situation we need to bring the region, we need to bring all of these countries. Yes, but you forget one thing. We don't want to be countries taken close to EU without joining with autocrats, with the clear, open negation of everything that what Europe and the Western world stands on. And by the way, sanctions on Russia, who is Putin and Zelensky, it's not a topic anymore. And by the way, nobody will care 2 weeks from now about this. It will be much more important how we will deal with the Chinese and not how we will deal with Putin in international arena.
Sorry, I have to
yes, thank you.
cut you here because we have 2 more minutes. Let's give each panelist 1 minute to
But
respond.
this was just my reaction to Jeta, so I will take another
Sure.
question. Yeah.
So,
So I will
Madame
take another
Xharra,
one.
please,
After he takes
it's
another.
your turn.
No, just to answer the question about clergy, to be quick, there is no Kosovo Albanian clergy having an effect on the dialogue at all, because our Muslim community is not involved in the dialogue at all, the Muslim side of the clergy. But what is important is that Kosovo actually fulfilled an obligation that it was stalling on in implementing the law to give the monastery of Dečani the land that it was owned. That was a big dispute. There was reluctance a few months ago. The clergy in Dečan, if you want to know what's the current debate, was given that, and there wasn't a big backlash. Basically, the decision was made to give monastery of Dečani the land, and there we are, another obligation fulfilled, which should have been done a long time ago. It took time, it was done.
Well, can I say a few words on a clergy, because I'm former monk of Dečani Monastery and former clergy. Well, land was not given to the monastery, it was returned, and the Constitutional Court said for a long time that land should be returned. Kurti claimed, well, I cannot, I'm apart from the executive, from that power. However, it showed that he is not, because the land was because of the bargaining with EU, etc., and many interventions of United States, it was done. But I also took part in interreligious dialogue for several years, and I mean, we didn't have effect on dialogue which was not existent at the time, but you know, there was an effort to bring communities a bit closer. However, all clerics failed in that attempt because, again, it is not popular among Kosovo Albanians to shake hands with Serbs, even though Kosovo Serbs as citizens, and I mean, we were just stuck in that, and it ended.
Thank you, and Mr. Surroi, you have the last word.
Let me finish on a literary happy note, responding to the Gazivode question. The lake of, and in one extended sentence, a very long extended sentence. The Lake of Gazivode, which was constructed by the Socialist Autonomous Province of Kosovo, which got indebted in the World Bank in order to do it, and the guarantees to it was made by the province, by the Assembly of the Socialist Autonomous Province of Kosovo, which bought some private land in the Republic of Serbia, Socialist Republic of Serbia at the time, provides water for a great part of Kosovo. It became a problem in the recent years, was negotiated in Washington, became shortly a Lake Trump, and after not very vociferous negotiations with people of goodwill, became Lake Gazivode under the administration of Kosovo, with a director who has always been a Serb and continues to be so. And this is the way things ought to be going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for ending on this note, and thank you for your patience and questions, and I think our panelists deserve a round of applause.